Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our mass airflow calibration table within a Gen 3 Mustang application. So if you're dealing with an F-150, they do not have a MAF sensor, and we don't have to worry about doing any MAF tuning. This is going to be Mustang specific. Now, if you're dealing with a Roush operating system for your Mustang, they're going to be switched over to MAP sensor based, so you're not going to have to worry about this either. This is going to be applying to the stock operating systems from Ford for a Gen 3 Mustang. So we have to go in here and potentially recalibrate our MAF curve if we've changed our intake from stock to an aftermarket. My demo vehicle here is a 2022 Mach 1 Mustang, and I have changed the factory airbox and intake over to a JLT cold air style intake. Now in this case, the mass airflow housing, or where the mass airflow sensor resides in the intake tube, is much larger than the stock GT350 intake that I took off the car. This requires me to immediately jump into the MAF curve and do a rescale and then do some fine tuning to make sure it's 100% before I really start to do any other calibrating and tuning in the engine control module. So this is one of the very first things that we have to make sure is right, because everything downstream of the MAF curve, so torque tables, spark timing tables, they can all be affected, or all are affected. Whatever the mass airflow sensor is going to be registering and reading in terms of airflow, that affects everything downstream. So torque, spark timing calculations, there's other things that can also be influenced and affected by it. Let's say you have a automatic transmission control module is based on torque is based on airflow. So if your airflow isn't right coming from the MAF curve because you've rescaled it improperly, or you've tuned it improperly, then you're going to find you have a ton of other issues, and it all stems from an improperly tuned MAF curve. So I cannot stress this enough to be able to dial this in correctly. So we're going to take a look in this tutorial at prepping our file, getting it ready for the tuning process. Next tutorial, I'll actually show the demonstration of calibrating and tuning things, and you can see everything from start to finish, so you know what to expect on your Gen 3 Mustang. First thing I want to do here, let's jump into a stock equivalent file so we can take a look at a couple things. We're going to talk about how we're going to prep this file for the JLT intake that I've installed. We're also going to take a look at the VCM scanner, prepping a table overlay so that we have everything in order when we fire it up in the next tutorial to do the tuning process. So that's all ready to go, and we can just use that kind of as a guideline in what we're actually updating and changing in the MAF curve. And we also are going to be taking a look at the Excel spreadsheet from the training course folder. That is going to allow us to do some rescaling. It's going to make a little bit better sense of when we install an intake, whether it's going to be something I've documented in terms of intakes that we can just go in and pop the data in, or if we don't have any data for the intake, so you have an intake that I don't have on the list I'm supplying here, you know how to measure things and then how to do the rescale. It's simple enough, but definitely very important that we use that Excel spreadsheet calculator to give us a better starting point, because we don't want things way off when we fire up and run our engine. When we install an aftermarket intake and we don't have a pre-existing MAF curve that we can pop into our file. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is jump up here into the engine tab, and I'm going to go, let's give that a second, go up here to general, and we're going to go over here to airflow, and then we're going to go into general. In here, we find that we have this area called MAF calibration. This is all things related to our mass airflow sensor. Now, we have two tables. This can be confusing. A lot of people don't understand this and why there's two tables in here. There's an airflow versus voltage, and there's an airflow versus period. Now, the airflow versus period is what we want to actually use. This is what's in play here, and this is what Ford is running. The airflow versus voltage is kind of in a legacy programming in the engine control modules. This is an older type of mass airflow sensor calibration curve that is always left in the Ford programming. I'm not quite sure why it's here. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but if we actually take a look, the MAF type is set here to digital. You can have it to analog, although I don't know what would happen if you switched it over, because everything is based around a digital type of mass airflow sensor. So the digital is what the Gen 3 Mustangs actually run, and that is going to point us towards the MAF airflow versus period table, because this period table here, we can see it's going to be based on period in microseconds versus a grams per second value in the table. This is what's actually used just for perspective sake. So it's not going to be doing anything with the airflow versus voltage. So a common mistake that people make is they pop the airflow versus voltage table open and they try to make changes in here and nothing is happening. So our fuel trims are still being off, whether it's rich or lean, whatever the calibration needs to be adjusted. This is doing nothing because we're not running that mass airflow type. So I'm not quite sure why they even give you the option to switch it here, and I don't know why they even continue to populate this table in the calibration files. This again is a legacy table left over from earlier generation Mustangs that ran an analog type of MAF signal. So we're going to close this out. We are not going to touch MAF type from digital, and we are only going to focus on our mass airflow versus period table. Now, looking into this table, we're going to see that, again, it's based on our microsecond period. So we can see this is going to be what's coming out of the MAF sensor. And then the ECU is going to do a lookup directly to see what the grams per second value should be at that particular period. So if we jump in, let's go move over to our scanner here real quick. We're going to find that I have this table overlay built already right here. But more importantly, if we take a look, we're going to see that we have this channel here called mass airflow period. This is registering what the mass airflow sensor is outputting in that microsecond period value. And then it's doing that lookup, as I mentioned, go back in here to the table. It's going and looking up, it's just a lookup table. It's going to go look up what the grams per second value of airflow coming into the engine is going to be. So it's that simple. It's very basic, but extremely powerful, because this is the basis of where the airflow registration starts in the engine control module. Now, downstream of this, let's start to discuss that a little.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.